suddenly I hear this guy, basically he's going, that's bloody thing. And he kicks R2-D2, literally throws him off the truck. I'm like, what? That's R2-D2. You can't do that. You can't treat him like that. Soon I discovered why.
Welcome to The Practical Filmmaker, an educational podcast brought to you by the Filmmaker Institute and Sunscreen Film Festival, where industry professionals talk nuts and bolts and the steps they took to find their success today. Find the full transcripts and more at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. I'm your host, Tanya Musgrave, and today we have Eric Jewett, First AD and Second Unit Director for television series such as Code Black, True Detective, and Dexter, and films such as 300, Rise of an Empire. You also cannot ignore the giants of the 80s on his second AD roster, including Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, Cobra, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
All right, a little backstory for the listeners. My alma mater does a microbudget feature every 4 years, so students can experience working on a feature. We were looking for a producer who also had a passion for working with students, and I reached out to a previous podcast guest, Jason Roberts, for suggestions. And even though your schedule didn't line up, lucky for me, we got introduced. And lo and behold, you actually do teach, like in Colorado. So this sounds like multiple interesting turning points. So let's start with how you got into the industry.
I studied film in college. At the end of that, I lived in Massachusetts. And there was a guy in my hometown who had won an Academy Award for a documentary. So I thought, he'll hire me, of course. Nice. So I knocked on his door. I played soccer with his son.
Oh, okay. I'm just like, wait, you just went and knocked on his door?
Just about. He'd never met me.
Oh, okay.
And he said, I don't have a job. He said, if I were your age, I'd go to Hollywood.
All right.
So I got in my car. I drove to Hollywood.
Okay.
I had half a tank of gas and $50. And I started knocking on doors. And I sent out 100 letters. Wow. And I got a call from just one. That's the only response I got. And the assistant said, his other assistant just quit. He needs help. Will you come in and meet him? And that was Paul Schrader. And he was prepping American Gigolo, which at the time was with John Travolta, but it ended up being Richard Gere.
Yeah.
So I worked as Paul's assistant for a year and a half. And learned everything. It was like getting paid to go to graduate school. He was great. I was on the film, on the set every day, all through editing, everything. And that launched me. I met a bunch of people on that, and those people then took me on the next films.
So, okay, all right. So I got to know, because your IMDb, it shows you were part of, like, a couple smaller films, like, as like second AD and, that kind of stuff. And then, like, bam, all of a sudden Star Wars. They'd already had their two successful films. So, like, obviously you knew what you were going to be a part of. Tell me about the conversations, I guess, that got you onto Star Wars.
I was actually working on another film. It was called The Mae West Story or something to that effect. Ann Jillian was playing Mae West. And I was working with the assistant directors from American Gigolo. I'd been working as an assistant director on small films or a PA on big films. And I would go back and forth. So I knew a lot. One day the DP, Jim Glennon, says, Eric, come over here. I said, what? He says, I've been watching you. You seem to know what you're doing. What are you doing after this show? I'm like, I don't know. I'll be unemployed like everybody else. Why? What do you know? And he says to me, my friend Bob Brown has got this show going in Northern California. Do you want to go? I was like, yeah, I'd love to go to Northern California. And he said, all right, give me your phone number. Literally, that's all I knew about it. Yeah. And I get a phone call from Bob Brown. He doesn't really tell me what the picture is. He just says it's a big show and it's in Northern California. I was like, great, I'm in. So I went in there like really knowing nothing.
Oh my gosh.
They didn't give me a script. Nobody got a script. They sort of gave me the broad strokes of what was up. A lot of action sequences in the redwood trees. I was like, I love being in nature. Bring it on. And I show up and there's Harrison Ford. And, they're all there.
Shock of a lifetime.
Yes. I mean, like my second night on the job, I'm at a dinner with all the stars.
Oh, my stars.
And the producers. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And this is how little I knew. I had never been on a show where they gave out per diem. So they handed me this handful of cash when I showed up.
Wow.
And we're in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to spend it. But I knew so little that I was so excited to be at dinner. I bought dinner for everybody.
Oh my gosh.
I picked up the tab for the whole table.
They're like, you're hired. Come back again.
Just, yeah.
I cannot imagine walking onto set that first day, especially if you had no idea. I mean, okay, because like I still remember when somebody brought me on. It was like my first ever. I got a call doing sound design, working for the school's feature. Like that was the thing. And I mean, at that point, you're a sophomore in college and you just can't breathe when you get an email like that. But if you didn't even know that was where you were headed, I would have gone catonic, like right there on set.
Right. I was pretty excited, let me tell you. And within 5 minutes of being on set, I'm sort of by the trucks and we're unloading, just sort of, as you do in the morning. Everybody's getting ready. And suddenly I hear this guy, if I could do a Cockney accent, I would do it for you. But basically he's going, that's bloody thing. And he kicks R2-D2, literally throws him off the truck. I'm like, "What? That's R2-D2. You can't do that. You can't treat him like that." Soon I discovered why. Those sort of mechanical, it was all practical.
Yeah.
There were 5 of them and they all did different things. Yeah. And none of them worked like they were supposed to. And, the guy was a genius at fixing them and making them do little things, but it was a lot of stress for him.
Well, that's R2. You can't.
Yeah, no, he's a star. Where's this trailer?
Okay, so big movies and all that fun stuff. I had heard that, a good reason for transition that some people went from films to television is, just the regularity of things. You get into a good groove. And so you went from that to television and kind of like second unit directing. What was it for you that made you pivot from like films to television?
It was accidental, really. I finished a job and I had a little bit of time off. It was like in the fall and I had like nothing before the year started. Vicki LeMay, who had been my second AD on a couple of movies, she calls me and said, "I'm doing this TV show and the first AD just quit to do the show in Hawaii and they need somebody to finish the season out. There were like 6 episodes left." And I filled in exactly when I thought I'd be done. First of the year I'd be done with it. I said, "Great, sure, whatever." So I went in, they were great. I started the show. It was called Party of 5. It was the first season. And cut to 6 years later, I'm still working on the show. It was a great gig. They treated me really well. I directed a lot of episodes of that show.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful experience. The writing was good. The actors were good. And it was just lovely. And it happened, like that was right when the golden age of television was starting. And features to me were less interesting. They were the kind of films that were being made were no longer the kind of great auteur films that were in the 70s in Hollywood. They were becoming meaningless big pictures as far as I was concerned. And I really liked this show. So there I was. And suddenly I'm doing TV and TV people like me. Now I'm in the groove of that. I just sort of rode the wave of golden TV right in.
Some of the biggest differences for you going from film to television, would that be just kind of like that groove, or like what learning curve was there for you? Or, was it pretty natural of just being like, oh, okay, actually, because I remember Corey, you've worked on the same stuff with Corey, I think.
Yeah, he was my second AD on that show for a little bit.
What do you know? I still remember him saying, he would stay super late and, all this stuff until finally a guy was just like, "Hey, dude, like this is going to be the easiest thing you've ever done. Like you don't need to kill yourself." Like, so were there some kind of learning curves for you as well?
It was much the same. The work was the same. The difference was we had to do way more pages per day. I was used to doing a show where you do 2 pages a day, and now we had to do 6 to 8 pages a day, and change locations, and change stages, and change scenes, and change actors. So the pace of it was much faster.
Gotcha.
But I like that. I like staying busy, and it was very exciting. Like go, come on! I'd get coffeeed up, and away we go.
As does everybody.
That's right.
So you started to do some second unit directing as well, correct?
Yes, I did. There were bits and pieces of things, and I would do, like even on Return of the Jedi, we were really overwhelmed, and they said, "Okay, we need a shot of 2 stormtroopers falling down. Take the C camera and go over and shoot that." It's not technically second unit directing, but it was the sort of thing that I was good at
Yeah.
and people would trust me to do.
Okay.
And I did the same thing with Cobra.
Okay.
Take those 15 stunt guys,
Mm-hmm.
because on the first unit of Cobra, we did the wide shot of Stallone, the medium shot of Stallone, the close-up of Stallone, the extreme close-up of Stallone. And then they move on to a different location and they say, Eric, keep these 3 cameras and those 40 stuntmen and just have all the stuntmen get shot and fall down.
And that works. There you go.
Yes, right? So that sort of led me into having just some sense of what to do with the camera and what to do with the actors. And
Okay.
then in Party of 5, because all the actors knew me really well,
Mm-hmm.
they were very comfortable with me being the actual director of the episode.
Okay.
So it wasn't second unit directing, it was actual directing.
Okay. Nice.
Which was nice.
Nice.
That was where I really cut my teeth on working with actors.
With the second unit directing for films versus second unit directing for television, what is that necessarily like? Because I mean, like some of the other stuff is not necessarily as like stunt heavy, I guess, as some of the films where you have the stormtroopers, you have the stuntmen, and all that stuff. But for television, what does that look like for a second unit?
I would say there isn't really such a thing as second unit directing in television.
Okay.
I mean, there is.
Okay.
There is, but but you just don't do it as often. They don't have the budgets to say, all right, take another whole second crew and go out and shoot stuff.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it was necessarily a common thing. Okay, all right.
No, but I would say it's similar. And I really have to set the record straight. I wasn't officially the second unit director on those other movies. There was an actual either stuntman or stunt coordinator or a second unit director.
Okay.
They were doing the real big stuff. I was just doing a shot here and a shot there.
Gotcha.
And that sort of happens with television too, the kind of thing. I was on a show, Dexter always, they wrote that big. That was always a big show to do.
Yeah.
And we were always fighting to get all the shots. And the producer said, well, why don't I just take the B camera and go out and shoot a double for Michael driving the car down the street or whatever. Great. Please take that off my plate. You guys deal with that. So they started doing that, and it became almost one day an episode shooting those kind of shots.
Wow.
And we referred to it as the Bowfinger crew.
What?
This ragtag group would just go out and shoot a couple of shots for every episode.
That's amazing.
They actually made T-shirts, the Bowfinger Dexter crew. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's what it looks like in TV. It's small, it's fast, and the scope of the shots are not as big.
Yeah. So from all of that to Colorado, give voice to the internal conversation that led in that direction.
So my son went to CU Boulder because he wanted to go snowboarding for 4 years while he went to college. He liked Boulder so much he stayed there. So my wife and I would go back and visit. And, every time we went, I said, this is beautiful. I love it here. We should just move here. And she'd roll her eyes at me and say, yeah, right. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Cut to, we come back from Boulder one time and she picks up the mail and she says, did you see your DGA magazine yet? She shows me, and there is a full page ad in the DGA magazine that says, CU Denver is looking for a professor to teach filmmaking. And I thought, what do I have to lose? I sent him a resume. And 3 weeks later, they offered me the job. I was so not prepared for that. It's like, what?
Let's talk about that learning curve again.
Yes, exactly. And the next thing you know, I'm living in Boulder and working in Denver teaching.
Wow. So, okay, when we chatted before, you mentioned that you were actually doing something similar to my alma mater, like producing a microbudget project so that students have an opportunity to like function on like in onset roles. So you've worked big budget shows, obviously, and now microbudget indies.
Yes.
Besides some of like the obvious stuff like talent and crew, what is an unexpected place that you found to minimize budget and, that kind of thing on the producing side?
Well, the obvious thing is that the school owns all the gear. So all the gear is free.
Yeah.
So there's like no cost. And then we're shooting digitally. So there's it's crazy. When I went to college and made short films, it was super expensive.
Yeah.
And now they just hand you the gear. And maybe you spend $40 on an SD card, but that's about it, right?
Yeah.
And you edit it on your computer. So that's pretty wonderful
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that.
Nice.
And then, schools are an amazing wealth of locations. And I can't describe how it happens. But just yesterday, we're looking for this penthouse apartment. And I imagined 20 stories up in a glass and steel kind of tower.
Mm-hmm.
And she says to me, let's go look at the Tivoli building. And it's an old brewery that's in the center of the campus that's now like the student union.
Mm.
And all of that is on the first floor. And that's the only place I've ever been. And she says, let's go up this elevator.
Mm. And
we go up to the fourth floor, and it's a conference room, or that's what they use it for.
Mm.
But it has 20-foot arched windows that looks out onto the city.
Oh, windows.
It's got this kind of messed up, cracked, like plaster over brick. So it looks like this funky loft, like what's her name had in Flashdance.
Okay.
And it's, 2,000 square feet. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. I mean, this is like totally a guy's apartment.
Yeah.
And it's picturesque and it's free.
The best part.
Right? And I've been, seriously, my students have been scouting out these penthouse locations for months now. And we weren't coming up with anything. And suddenly, bing, there it is. So it's that kind of stuff that with the students' enthusiasm, things just miraculously appear.
And it's so true because, it's essentially a little ecosystem right there on campus.
I also scouted last week. We share the campus with another college, and they have a hospitality school, and they have a restaurant, an actual working restaurant, and they're going to let us shoot there.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, so we were at Sundance before, maybe a couple of years ago, and they've essentially had school productions that have won the grand jury prize, right? So for indie filmmakers and now educators listening, what do you feel is a fatal mistake in stunting the commercial success of a micro-budget film?
You know what? I honestly feel it's the same fatal mistake that affects every film and every TV show. Bad writing and bad acting. Seriously. That to me is why everyone goes to watch a movie or a TV show, is they want the writing to be great. They want the dialogue to be scintillating and real. And they want to look at real people on screen. If it's bad actors saying bad dialogue, click, you've moved on.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the ultimate challenge always for every filmmaker, is to have good writing and good acting. Obviously there's a lot of technical stuff too, but I also think there's plenty of movies that are not that well made technically, just because they didn't have money, or they had too small a crew, or difficult weather, you name it. And it didn't matter because the filmmaking was so great. Chloe Zhao's first picture, The Rider, which I thought was just amazing. Technically, it's okay, but it's great writing and great directing, and the actor is amazing. You're just gripped by it. The reverse of that is what is the fatal mistake that people make. They think, oh, he's my friend, so he can be the star of the movie. Or we went to high school, and so we're really a good writing team.
Yeah. How would you advise people to accomplish that on a micro budget?
First of all, writing doesn't take any budget at all.
There you go.
Other than paying the rent and eating while you're doing it.
Yeah.
But, writing is rewriting, and I'm stunned by how many people think that, when they've typed the end, that they're done.
Yeah.
And they're not, So that, I think, just sheer laziness there is the first bit with that. Casting is, hey, that's the age-old question. Where do you find good actors? I have to say that, I've been in Denver for a few years, and it's a very thin pool here, very shallow pool of actors. There's some good actors, but they're not many. You bump into great actors in Hollywood all the time, because that's where they all go.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm teaching acting now at CU Denver, and this class I was surprised. I was very nervous going into this. I'm thinking, who do I know in Hollywood that I get to come out and be in this film? Where am I going to find the cast? I ended up having 2 or 3 choices for each role in the film that I'm making now, and I was surprised. 2 or 3 choices that I would have been very happy with any one of it.
Yeah.
I lucked out. It's a good cast, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of filmmakers that don't know good acting too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the problem. It's like I say, they think if they're cute or they're wearing the right costume, then they think they're good actors.
Yeah. We'll make it look pretty.
Yes, right. I mean, that's sort of it. They go for that.
Yeah. How's that transition been for you, by the way? The teaching, the filmmaking to teaching transition.
The good news is I'm not on my feet and I'm not so tired as I used to be.
Yeah.
The bad news is I went from being an expert in Hollywood to being a rank beginner at a teaching. I have no clue what I'm doing teaching. So I'm just flailing along. Hopefully they'll like me.
I have a passion for teaching. And there is something so unique about it that I will get chills. Like when I'm trying to help somebody like reach a concept, I'll get chills. Like I literally like bumps on my arm. I'm just like, oh man, I've never gotten that. Like when I have like, gotten a really good shot that I like, or, something along those lines. And so like there are sometimes like passions that overlap creatively, from being the creative to like teaching creative. Have you found any kind of overlap for you?
Totally. I underestimated teaching when I started it, and I kept hearing teachers say, there's no better way to learn a subject than to teach it.
Yeah.
And I when I first heard that, I thought, oh, that's stupid. But once I started teaching these classes, I realized I was really thinking about what I was doing. I wasn't just working on my instincts like I had been doing before.
Mm-hmm.
I was really thinking about, why do we do this? And what does it mean to do that? And the more I thought about it, the deeper it became for me, and the better I was able to articulate it to my students.
Mm-hmm.
I feel sorry for the students I had 4 years ago when I first started.
No, like my mom started teaching. I remember somebody saying that you are drowning for the first 3 years, and then after that you're just like, all right, I got the hang of it.
Right.
How do you what are some of the sources that you have, the resources that you have that help you stay current within the context of where you are now?
I feel that academia is not really paying attention to current filmmaking. They have other things in mind, other priorities in mind, which is a challenge.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's COVID. I have Netflix.
Yes.
I'm learning a lot from watching a lot.
Yeah.
I truly miss the only thing I really miss about Los Angeles. I miss Los Angeles because I used to go to the Directors Guild screenings all the time and talk to other directors and watch films. And that was always a great experience. I mean, no, they're not doing that now, of course, either. They're not going to the theater. Yeah. But that was always a wonderful thing to do. And yes, I have other teachers here, but I learned more about teaching from them, but less about film and filmmaking.
Craft, yeah. Speaking of missing things, you've been able to see the ebbing and flowing of film, obviously with like technology advancing so much recently and film becoming a lot more accessible. Like, is there any function of the film culture, like of the 80s and 90s and stuff that you miss that you wish they would keep today?
I want to pivot just slightly on that, because I have gone from working on really big pictures with top professional crews with all the best gear, all the newest toys. And now I'm literally in the middle of shooting this film and just getting a dolly move with the most basic crude gear. For me, the most derisive term I could come up with a bad crew was, ugh, what a bunch of amateurs. And now I'm literally working with amateurs.
Yes.
I have to adjust my expectations. I actually don't mean that as an insult to the students, because they are amateurs, and it's just where they are in their level of filmmaking. Yeah. They offset that by their wild enthusiasm and their really interesting and unusual and creative ideas that they come with, which they're not afraid to express to me at any moment. That's the great thing about 20-year-olds. Like, I had one the other day telling me how I should be directing. Like, really, dude? But he had a good idea. and I stole it.
There you go. You steal like an artist. Come on. I mean, everybody.
Right. Exactly. I think that the idea of having to really think about the basics of what you need and what you don't need.
Mm-hmm.
Technology doesn't get in the way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're just making film.
Yeah.
With actors. You whittle it down to that.
Nice. So along those lines, what you were saying about, their enthusiasm and stuff, what positive aspect of this present film culture do you see? Not necessarily of new filmmakers, but of this new style of filmmaking that you're seeing with Netflix and streaming and, the absolute explosion of content that you're seeing.
Wow, there's so much great TV being made. Well, content, I guess. I don't even know what to call it anymore. If I saw the features on Netflix, whatever. There's so much great stuff. And I feel that the artists that are making film now come from all different walks of life and all different cultures. And I love that. We're seeing different perspectives now that we didn't see before. That, to me, makes film much more interesting. And I think that we're becoming more open to it. The audiences are more open to it too. Or the audiences are hungry for it. They just weren't getting it before. And now, because there's Amazon, there's Hulu, there's Netflix, there's HBO, there's the actual studios and actual television, broadcast television. There's so much to be seen and so much time to be filled that it's opening up opportunities for lots of people. And I love that.
So now we're going to ask about some tools of your trade. What gear or gadget, or even software, what are your favorite old reliables?
The Mac laptop that I'm talking to you on right now is the old reliable. My iPhone, I'm addicted to it, I confess. I get really anxious if it's not with me, really anxious. But, I record people's conversations to use in dialogue later. I take pictures everywhere I go it gives me ideas of how I want to shoot something. And it's a great communication tool that I can hold it up to my DP and say, this is the shot I had in mind. Those are the old reliables. Honestly, everything else is changing so fast that to me, it's not even worth mentioning cameras because, 6 months from now, there'll be a new one and it'll be better.
This is true. Well, I'm still going to ask. What is your favorite new gadget that revolutionizes how you work?
The webcam that I'm using in my acting class. And I don't love it. I'm teaching an acting class with people that are in their own bedrooms and using the webcam and the cams on their computers. And it's almost like cutting between close-ups back and forth between actors who are in different places.
Oh, wow.
And they're working remotely. That is not something I ever expected to do. It's not something I expected to like and embrace. And it really is not something I thought would work at all. I started this last August and I thought, there's no way this is going to work. It's turned out to work really well. And there's something about these kids that are just becoming actors. They're still nervous when there's an audience or a crew around. So we're doing this and there isn't a crew around. They're just by themselves talking to their screens, which is something that they do day in and day out in their normal life anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So they're comfortable with it. Yeah. And I think it's helped them become comfortable with acting on the camera. I hope that's not too disappointing an answer.
No, not at all. This is really a chance for people to just talk shop of, things that they like, apps that they've used. Like, I will ask, if you are out there with your phone, is there a specific app that you use?
Absolutely. There's 2 apps that I use a lot. One is Artemis, which is a viewfinder, and it enables me to put in the lenses that are in the box that we have and just go wider, or longer. This is the lens I want. And I can take a picture of that and say specifically to the DP, we're going to be here with a 75 millimeter. And that's hugely helpful. Another one, which I use for scouting, I never scouted without it in the last 10 years. It's called Sun Seeker. It'll tell you what time the sun is coming up, what time it's setting. It will tell you that information for a date in the future.
Wow.
It has 2 views. You can hold it flat and there'll be like a sort of like a sundial thing. This is where the sun rises.
Okay.
This is where the sun sets. This will be at high noon.
Wow. Okay.
Or there's another view where you hold it up like a camera.
Okay.
And there's a yellow line, which is the path of the sun.
Wow.
And you can just move it and say, okay, the sun is going to be right behind that tree at noon.
Wow.
For example, if you want to say, when is the shade from that tree going to be here? Because that's going to be the best time to shoot.
Wow.
And you can say, that tree will put shade in this spot between 4:15 and 5:20.
Whoa. Length of shadows? Like, that's part of it?
Yes.
Whoa. I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've heard of those apps that will, like, hey, the sun's going to be right here. But I did not think about the length of shadows. Oh.
Yes. And because it will show you the actual path of the sun, you can back up and say, okay, at 5:15, the sun will be here. Or I could be 2 steps closer to the tree and it won't be sunny here till 5:30. Something like that. So you can really be specific about what's going to be sunny, what's going to be shady.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
It's a great tool.
Gotcha.
Sunseeker, and it's like $3 or something.
Yeah. Nice. So we have a couple listener questions from our Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @practicalfilmmaker. So somebody must have seen, well, we did put it up there, that you had worked on Star Wars. Any fun stories about working with George Lucas, or did you actually work with him?
I didn't work with him extensively. He was mostly down in Marin doing prep work, but he showed up a few times, and I thought it was really interesting because we had these storyboards. It was like a book of storyboards. I wish I had that book today. They made us all turn them in afterwards. I wish I had it. I mean, to be honest with you, not even as a souvenir, but as a learning tool, I would really like to look and say, remember, what do we do? Yeah. But anyway, the shot, I don't know if you remember, the team is walking along through the forest and Endor, and suddenly they go whoosh, and they're caught in a net and they're hanging from a net. Yeah. And then R2-D2 saws it and they all fall down.
Yeah.
So that little scene, there was a storyboard involved, and we shot that scene. 3 days later, George shows up on the set and he hands us, the ADs, the page, and he said, "This is what the page looks like. You guys didn't shoot that." Oh. Yeah. I can't remember exactly, but we were a little too far away or not down low enough, or, just it wasn't how he envisioned it. Yeah. And I looked at the page more carefully and I was like, you know what? He's right. It's not as what we made is not as dynamic a shot as what he envisioned.
Wow.
We redid it. And there's no question he was right. And he had he has a really good eye and he knows how to do this stuff. And that was literally my only experience with him.
Well, I mean, they say too that like directors too, especially when they have such a specific vision, I can understand, I guess. I can understand if a director has something very specific in mind and it's not there on the screen. But wow, when you're involving like a crew and the amount of resources that it would take to reshoot that.
Honestly, it wasn't that hard a shot to reshoot.
Okay, but that's good.
But yes, it definitely took another like 2 or 3 hours out of our day.
Okay, yeah.
That we had to spend doing it.
Gotcha.
That's what separates the good directors from the great directors, is those that are specific. I also did the second unit on Basic Instinct, and Paul Verhoeven, he actually drew me, like pulled out a piece of paper and drew something on a piece of paper and said, "Here, I want you to shoot this shot."
Wow.
And I looked at it. It's like, that is a very interesting perspective on this piece of action. And it was way more interesting than kind of the standard shot that one would make of a car driving by.
Yeah. Oh, you got to love visual people, because like when they give you a picture of that, you're like, okay, that I can do. Yes. It's like, if you're trying to describe it to me, I have no clue. None whatsoever.
Ernest Dickerson is a director I AD'd for several times on several different shows. Okay. He is an amazing artist, and he draws storyboards that are really beautiful.
Wow. If he would have done that with me, I would have totally taken that as a souvenir. The souvenir, like I know that you said it was, it's just, for educational. No, I would have framed that.
Yeah.
One more question from the listeners. What is a project that you're most proud of?
That's a tough question because there's so many. Star Wars, of course. Team America was all puppets.
Oh, wow.
The entire world of that film we created.
Wow.
We didn't go to some location and say, okay, this is a beautiful hillside. Now we'll put beautiful people on it. We created the hillside.
Wow.
We built our own version of the Taj Mahal and then burned it down. We built our own version of Paris. And the production designer, Jim Dultz, put cobblestone streets, and the cobblestones were made out of croissants.
Wow. Oh.
And then we burned down the Champs-Élysées and the Eiffel Tower.
Oh my gosh.
And blew them up.
That sounds like a fun day.
It was a really fun day.
That sounds like a blast. Well,
right.
Blast.
We had an airplane fly into the opening mouth on Mount Rushmore because that was their secret lair.
Okay. Nice.
It was a spoof on action movies, and Matt and Trey, those guys are so much fun, and we just hung out. They made me laugh every day, and every day they came up with some new crazy idea. All of us were like, what? We have to do that now? And then we'd say, that's a really good idea. Let's do it.
And what a job to go to every morning. You look forward to laughing and you look forward to an adventure there.
The perfect day of filmmaking.
And what current project are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited about the film I'm making now, that's for sure. I try to live in the present, and I'm doing it. It's a neo-noir about a young woman whose suddenly successful boyfriend abandons her, and she enlists a security specialist to wreak her revenge.
Ooh.
And I love noir films, the whole style and the tone of those.
Yes.
But there's an extra element to it. I'm doing it as part of a teaching thing. There's one scene where they have a date in the cafe in which I'm going to purposefully cross the line with the camera. And, few filmmakers do that, and it always gives you that kind of uncomfortable feeling. So I'm doing it on purpose for that reason. After the credits, I'm doing a film within the film that's going to be for schools to explain what it means to cross the line. What is the 180-degree line?
Okay.
What does it mean to cross it when you don't mean to? And what does it mean to cross it when you do mean to?
That sounds awesome.
Literally every semester, I try to explain crossing the line to students. It's a long and complicated explanation. Their eyes start to glaze over. I still don't feel like I've got the explanation down. I always have to say, all right, you sit there, you two look at each other. Now I'm the camera. Now what if I go over there? Now you see she's looking left where she used to be looking right. And
yeah,
it starts to make more sense when you see all the pieces and then pull back and see it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that now I don't have to bore them with my explanation. I'm going to just say, here, watch this.
How do people find you or follow your work?
IMDB me would be good.
Yeah.
I will have to up my game on Instagram. It's pretty weak right now, but I intend to make it better. So that will be probably the spot right there.
Okay. And the question that I ask everybody, what question should I have asked you?
How did I last so long in Hollywood?
Well, consider the question asked.
I love making films. It's so much fun. It just excites me all the time. There's nothing I would rather do than be in production. Even though it exhausts me and aggravates me, it thrills me and it fills me with creativity. And I wake up literally in the middle of the night with new ideas, like little light bulbs go off in my head. Oh, I could do this. Filmmaking is just, I love it.
You're where you need to be then.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on The Practical Filmmaker.